Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Remotely Serious. I'm here with Brett Estep. You're I think I saw it, was it co-founder, president, and COO of Insured Nomads? Is that
I am
correct?
indeed.
That's
Yes,
that's
I
me
am indeed.
stalking on LinkedIn. I didn't just know that. I got it from LinkedIn, but that's correct in terms of your title. Your
It
titles.
is indeed. Yeah. And
Great.
good to be on your show, and congrats on the success here at Remotely Series.
Yeah, I remember I had an exit in early 2020. I sold a company February 2020, and that kicked off a whole journey about what I was going to do next. And so, long story short, I got into blogging and talking about remote work and what was going on with COVID and remote work and digital nomads and all that kind of stuff. And one of the first ever brands or companies that I encountered when I decided I had been in healthcare before, so I kind of actually knew a little bit about the insurance space. I sold a company that sold into enterprise healthcare risk bearing payers, et cetera, in the US. But anyway, Insured Nomads was one of the first brands I ran into, an enterprise grade company in the remote work and digital nomad space. This is early mid 2020 going into early 2021. And then one of the first in-person events I ever went to, I met Andrew Jernigan of Insured Nomads. And so it was one of the first relationships I ever built. But this is really the first time you and I are getting a chance to talk. So it'll be great to talk about Insured Nomads and remote working writ large and other things related to, fast forward 2023. So Brett, thanks again for jumping on.
Oh, all thanks to you, Curtis. Good to be with you.
So maybe let's just jump right into your company and what's in the name, and sort of make that a way of getting into an introduction. Insured Nomads, stepping back, I think most of the audience that listens to this podcast understands that there's the concept of a digital nomad, but I'll define it anyway in my own words, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about your target market. I imagine that there are digital nomads who, you might have health insurance in Canada with a province, or with the NHS if you're in England, or with various public and private insurers in the US if you're American. And then if you're a digital nomad, you might be working in Croatia or Bali or Costa Rica, and you realize, like, hey, does my health insurance work there? I don't just want the travel insurance I get for emergencies. I'm going to Bali for 6 months. I'm going to Croatia for 4 months. I need some kind of health insurance. And then you go online and you find something called Insured Nomads, and maybe you buy health insurance that's really, really applicable to a digital nomad. But we were talking off mic before we started, and maybe that is sort of the genesis of a market. But you're also a company that works in enterprise markets as well. So I'm curious, what is Insured Nomads in 2023, and who are you selling to, and what is your product in general?
Yeah, great question. And in 2023, we're far different than when we started the company back in 2019. And honestly, it was just a few months before the world shut down, so the timing wasn't. We didn't stick the landing on that one, but we had no way of knowing. And we have done a tremendous amount of product and support evolution in the subsequent 4 years essentially is what it's been. When we first started the company, it was really predominantly geared towards the consumer, and we were offering both short-term and long-term insurance products and services, almost exclusively to the digital nomad, the location independent, the remote worker. Um, there's a number of us that have backgrounds from either big insurance or group benefits, prior roles. And it's in those networks that then came to us and said, hey, we're interested in what you're doing on the direct to consumer side. Can you make those products and services available for our group clients? And so mid 2023, it was in April, we finally launched some new plans that are longer term use case, health insurance plans that cater to the enterprise segment. We're really focused on, kind of the small to mid market employers at this point. That then come with all of the technology and safety and security, medical and non-medical, and we can do both cross-border and local national risk under one policy. So those are the newer plans, which really reflect the evolution of the company. If I had to share with you a superpower that we had as a brand, I would tell you that it's our technology and our customer experience. So much of what we have tried to incorporate into the underlying offering reflects the antithesis of what you may find available in legacy insurance markets. And that's because, we started, we put this in the cloud initially. We have leveraged both large language models and the original artificial intelligence concepts in the back end of what we do. And so we wanted to introduce features and value that was relevant to the communities and the audiences that we support, and bring in technology that everybody is accustomed to engaging with today that just hasn't nor will it exist in kind of the legacy insurance markets. And I won't bore you with why I don't think that will happen, but that really is kind of our unique advantage in this market.
So let's break this down a little bit, even for my own edification. When we talk about, okay, so you learned there's this need out there in initially selling to digital nomads who realize there's not quite the right health insurance product for them, and Insured Nomads can come and fill that void. As many businesses do, you identify that there's a bigger, better, or different opportunity in selling to enterprise. When I think about this, does that mean when I think of digital nomads, they can be from anywhere, and you might have been able to and will be able to sell to them if they're from anywhere in terms of nationality? Oh, you're UK, Canada, American, Brazilian. You're going to Europe. You're going to Asia. The branding was go anywhere, get health insurance, and maybe there are some unique wrinkles about the United States, but generally it was like that. When you talk about selling plans to enterprise, does that mean there's a U.S. focus? Because when I think of a U.S. company, in my experience, they're managing things like health insurance. They're thinking about health insurance plans, all of the kind of stuff that is part of one of the, if not the biggest industry in the US, the healthcare industry. Whereas if I think of a big employer in the UK and you say, we're going to sell you an insurance plan for your employees, it's a little bit more like, oh, well, the NHS handles that. We don't, we're not Americans. We're not an American company. We don't handle that. What does it mean to shift to enterprise? And does that mean, am I correct in assuming that means a U.S. focus even more so, or am I totally off base on that? And it's for everyone all around the world.
No, I mean it's more the latter, but let me
Yeah.
kind of talk through that because I think it is very nuanced. Um, when we approach the enterprise market, we do so almost exclusively through channel partners, which is intermediaries, brokers, and consultants that represent those clients. Um, but to purchase something like medical insurance, you are absolutely correct in that it is a notion that makes a lot more sense in the States because of state provided medical insurance in other countries all over the world. But what's interesting is that we did not initially start our go to market with these plans in the Americas. We were seeing far more opportunities coming out of APAC and EMEA and Africa, which I know is part of EMEA, but we've got a lot of opportunities in Africa. And I think a lot of that is a byproduct of, some of the, turmoil in the legacy insurance markets with, big companies divesting pieces and pulling away from certain, sectors of the market. It's created an opportunity for our brand to really flourish. But one of the differentiators for us that allows us to continue to have these global conversations is that we may deal with an employer that has a hybrid workforce that may have outbound U.S. risk, but they may also have pockets of local nationals in Singapore or the UK that our products and services will support under that same umbrella. And up until this point, you would otherwise have to come up with some sort of patchwork arrangement. But then the value that's extended to all of our members are the things that we have curated that go into the native app that is in iOS and Google Play, that provide them support services for all things medical, including all things non-medical. So geopolitical, civil unrest, natural disaster, etc. And then airport lounge access and cybersecurity, protection, because our communities tend to want good views, low cost, good Wi-Fi, And so we try to, package up all of these features that really cater to those audiences. But, back to your question, we have really moved into a pretty comprehensive go-to-market strategy for the Americas to address, the point that you had just made, which is there is a large market of corporate employers in the Americas, but I would qualify that to say there's still plenty of opportunities outside of this country too.
Got it. So a couple things I picked up on there. One is it's not just health and travel insurance. You mentioned a collection or an umbrella of things, including political unrest, travel interruption, airport lounges. Not even necessarily insurance for bad things happening, but
Mhm.
some of the perks, the halo of perks, like the airport lounges, is an important part of it. And you also mentioned you say you're mostly or exclusively through channel partners. So does that mean you're predominantly focused on, and I don't know exactly which ones, but like the Mercers or the Aon Hewitts or the Towers Watsons of the world? That's the prime way that you get in front of your intended buyers for your enterprise tier or your enterprise product.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's a small percentage of direct relationships that we have with employers, but I would say by and large it's coming through the names that you had just mentioned.
Got it. So maybe taking a step back, I think first of all, this is really great for all of our listeners. Like this kind of thing is just going to become more and more important for people and for companies that are managing international workforces and remote first and hybrid workforces. Just in terms of the product and what you actually are as an entity, as in a company, and as a company, if you have the pitch, which is, whether the distribution is from a B2C customer or a company giving it to 500 employees or 5,000 employees, the pitch for the product is you can go to many, multiple, if not over 150 countries in the world. You can relocate. I won't say often, but you could move. My understanding is you could be 6 months in Singapore and then 3 months in the UK and then 1 month on site in Canada, and there's a global health insurance product that's robust and not just the thin layer of travel emergency, but it's health insurance plus all the other things you mentioned.
Mhm.
How do you do that? How do you have like it's I've known health insurance companies in the US that are saying we can never expand beyond the US because we're going to be here. We've been here for decades and expanding would be hard. Insurance feels like something. Of course, there are global insurance brands, but it feels like something for a relatively new startup. I know you've been around for a while.
Mhm.
Global coverage. That sounds like an amazing. It's an amazing pitch and it's an amazing product. But how do you actually get that done from a contractual level? Or what kinds of partners do you have to work with in order to deliver this almost magic wand of global coverage? If I can use that term.
Yeah. Um, Another great question. So, um, we believe that, and we're seeing it day in, day out. This idea of being remote, this concept of never-ending mobility, I think existed pre 2020, but it really has, since so much attention was put on a couple key things: people being stuck and not being able to travel or go anywhere, and their lives being largely disrupted, either from a, health perspective, an economic perspective, a community perspective. And so you have this whipsaw effect of people coming out of the past 2, 3 years that now are, committed to being global and global citizens. And so how we accomplish that, we've designed all the insurance products. I mean, insurance largely has a bad rap. Either people buy it and they don't use it, they don't buy it and they regret it because they need it. Then when you try to engage with an insurance brand, the service component is beyond subpar, and there's this idea that you have to pay with your own money and collect some foreign paperwork and send it to somebody and cross your fingers that all of it isn't denied in 2 months time. It's those friction points that we know exist, how to find healthcare and how to finance healthcare. So we've incorporated things in the insurance products to address that. Think TripAdvisor as opposed to just an alphabetized list. Think fintech integrations with our MasterCard pay card so that you get the digital money that's integrated with your digital wallet, which is how people. I go to concerts and I go to, travel. Everything is incorporated with my digital wallet down to my, coffee rewards card. And so why should insurance be any different? So in terms of the geeky structure of the business, Curtis, we operate as a MGU or an MGA, and we either build things internally, like some of the tech components, or we establish partnerships with companies like Bitdefender, who provides our cybersecurity protection because it's an important value delivery, but we have no interest in becoming a cybersecurity company. So we just partner with some of the industry's best, to make those available in either a white labeled or a co-branded fashion. Um, and we source insurance capacity from different companies, but we handle all that on the back end, so the employer never has to handle any of that on the front end. Come to us, identify the specific needs, the geographies, the number of belly buttons, what type of plan value you're looking to, in terms of the design, and we bring all that back to you, and execute a single agreement to get that done.
One of the things that's really helpful. It mirrors. A lot of successful fintech companies have come in and done that. There's an element of underwriting your own risk, but it's also about being a router and finding the right partners to deliver the underwriting of the risk and deliver all of these specialty niche things like the cybersecurity. So that makes sense. I'm curious, actually, in terms of the actual, your customers and then your company, is Insured Nomads fully remote, or are you hybrid? What's kind of what's it like to be at Insured Nomads? Is everybody a nomad that's somewhere, or do you have an office? I know that I think there was a nominal connection to Alabama, if I have that right. I don't actually. I remember there being an address there when I was signing some document, or something. So I'm just curious what the philosophy of your company is internally around this whole world that you sell into.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a mixed bag as we kind of process this. So to answer your question directly, we are fully remote. We do have a corporate HQ that is in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where all of our governance and documents and things are, executed. But and that's because my business partner and co-founder Andrew has ties to Birmingham, Alabama, through school and otherwise. And but yeah, we strongly encourage people, all of our employees that are all over the world, to um, travel and live the lifestyle that we support. We find more and more applicants coming into the talent pipeline simply because they know that. Especially the younger generation has a tremendous desire to, travel and work and combine those two things, for the betterment of experiences or cultural immersion, or, whatever their desire is. But we have been fully remote from the start. We are considering looking at the fourth quarter of this year, getting an all employee meeting, probably somewhere between Kuala Lumpur, Thailand, someplace in the East. But we have had to, and one of the things that I'll tell people all the time, which is we're trying to create a best practice employer as a fully remote business, and all the challenges that come with being a remote business. And I think we're doing a pretty effective job at it. And I would never envision, I've never been to our corporate headquarters in 4 years. I don't know if I will ever go, if that speaks to our commitment to being remote.
Where are you based?
I'm currently in the Midwest in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, great, great. Yeah. I see that right about now, we're recording in the summer, dog days of summer of 2023. The current mood, it might just be aspects of the media, but I think there's some substance to the fact that there's a mood around many leaders and thinkers in Fortune 50 companies, Silicon Valley a little bit, and then maybe even in the longer tail of medium-sized companies, as they face a recession, as COVID is really quite in the rear view mirror in terms of an immediate risk and the immediate risk of lockdowns. There is this feeling that many leaders are saying, okay, we're going back to the office. Remote didn't work. Hybrid doesn't really work. We're going to negotiate. We might even go back on something we said about being remote forever. I hear it from, Amazon's doing it. Others are doing it. what's your take kind of from speaking to your prospects and your current customers around what's happening with, especially as you think about the enterprise? Is that just a nice headline that one CEO said, hey, we're going back to the office, so all of a sudden there's a trend? How do you see the long-term trend of more and more remote with this kind of short-term FUD around maybe we're all going back to the office? My personal bias, which I'll just say, is that I think the long-term trend is towards remote, but I try not to be a zealot about that and examine with, an open mind, if there's evidence that there's a trend that maybe it's reverting back to the office, because, that could be true.
It's funny. I'm finding that, on that specific topic, there seems to be a tremendous amount of response bias based on, industry or their personal point of view. We're obviously, all in on remote work. We are obviously banking on and assuming that it's here to stay. And I've got a lot of reasons that support that. But when I talk about this bias, it's like if I'm visiting with somebody that's from a more traditional industry, whether it's, finance or accounting or consulting, they seem to be the ones beating the drum to return to, on-premise work. I think there's, pluses and minuses to both. I think humans were not designed to, simply sit behind a screen, isolated. But there's ways in which we can solve for that as a remote company. The trends that we're seeing is that more remote, more hybrid. I'm constantly visiting with people that at the very least have flexible work schedules. And even in industries that, when I was in corporate benefits consulting in the middle of my career, that, it's a very traditional kind of approach, on-premise work, in the office, visiting with clients, collabing with the team, et cetera. But the trends that we continue to see, and I think it's supported by, good data out there, that, whether it's job satisfaction or employee productivity, and then this ability to, life work balance. I'm a father. I've got a young family, and my wife and I work at the house, when we're not traveling, and it's nice to be able to have that balance, which I think so many people that didn't have access to that lifestyle were thrown into it over the past couple of years, and I think it's going to be very difficult to pry them back into the office personally. And I think with some of these brands that I visited with, when they said, all right, this is all done, everybody's coming back to the office, a meaningful percentage of them said, okay, we'll leave. And so that's where I think they had to begin to consider, okay, well, we don't want to lose all of our talent because you're key talent. Let's come up with this hybrid that allows you some of the flexibility, but us to be able to, bring. And the other thing for consideration too, corporate real estate,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
outside of the looming macroeconomic stuff, and what may happen in corporate or commercial real estate, if companies walked away from it, to what extent do they want to bring that expense back onto, their, budgets? So.
Yeah. Yeah. The macro situation with the commercial real estate, that could be a whole other podcast in terms of what'll happen to downtowns, what'll happen to Class A office space, and all kinds of classes of office space, and will people bounce back to the city, even as maybe remote workers? Will they bounce back to the cities and get bored of the home office? There's still a lot of stuff that remains to be seen, but I almost want to think of it like, um, there's all this uncertainty right now, but I'm curious, kind of going back in time a little bit and looking at the present, where we know what we do know right now. If obviously you believe in this trend, this space, the remote work writ large, and everything that's going to happen with remote work. I do too. But if you were to look at, say, go back to 2018 or even 2021 when remote work was accelerating, and then look at now, what has been challenging? What would you say in the last 2 or the last 4 or 5 or 6 years hasn't happened as quickly as you thought, or maybe didn't take hold once COVID hit? You think, oh, everybody's going to know XYZ, or your customers are going to come running to you. Like, what have been some of the things where it's like, well, we thought this was going to take off, but there's still more education needed for the market, or maybe certain things aren't happening as quickly. Are there areas where, like, you wish you wish the enterprise customers would kind of know something that they don't get yet, and you want to grab them and say, hey, you need to get this, or tell the channel partners to educate them.
Yeah, I mean, so the brand visibility has been, difficult because we
Yeah.
haven't had, a massive marketing allocation that allows us to sponsor golf tournaments or Formula One race cars.
Yeah.
And so that's been a challenge for us. The other thing that's been a challenge, and we're not unique in this, is, capital markets are super tight, and they have been. I think they're looking at some of these, leading indicators of the economy and have some hesitation. And so when we were in periods where the organic revenue wasn't happening as often or as fast as we would want, as we scale the business, we have to look to, outside money. And, what once was a $10 million check is now a $4 million check. And what once was 90-day due diligence is 180 days. And so, you're finding, nuances in those aspects of the business that simply didn't exist in 2017 or 18. And, honestly, into 19, it wasn't until the, overwhelming economic, hardship that most societies and countries dealt with when things were locked down and so uncertain. But those are two of the key things that I think that, and I've told people, if we would have started the brand in 2012, I think we'd be, well on our way to achieving some of our both mid and long term goals, both from, acquisition of market share and top line growth. But we've just had to deal with some things that I think have been very tough for us and many other businesses as well.
Do you think that would you I mean, there's probably private conversations you have that you can't talk about, but in general, would you say that VCs get this space, or is there a chill on it? I don't mean, not because I know they love software. I think that's
Mhm.
most VCs love the scale of software, but of course, insurance is a whole different beast, and it's not. There are VC backed insurance companies, but it's a little bit more of a traditional industry. And so, what's your take on how the VCs see remote work as a trigger or an inflection point, like the kind that they like to look for? And do VCs get insurance? Do they understand the model and your model, or what don't they get if they should get it better?
Um, some do, some don't. The ones that don't, maybe they just don't have an emphasis on this industry or this sector. Some that don't get it will bring in experts that they have on their team that understand and can take the deep dive into the insurance. By and large, I think most of them have gotten it, and if they have certain questions, part of what we have to solve for as a business is that there's a good bit of diversity in our products and services, and we can cover a broad range of things. Oftentimes in early stage companies, these guys and gals want to see, some linear focus on, a niche business that has product market fit and is converting. And, we've had time to do, evolutionary work on our products and services and create some of these new go-to-market strategies, vis-a-vis the enterprise stuff that we're doing. And so I think that has, created some question marks where, we've gotten some VCs that say, hold on, you're doing both D2C and B2B work. And we're saying yes, but
Yeah.
that was because we were pulled into that based on many of our backgrounds coming from kind of that group insurance environment. But yeah, I mean, it's by and large, they get it. And when they don't, there's reasons why.
Got it. So there are other companies that, maybe one or two other companies like you that emerged in the last decade and specifically say, remote work insurance or nomad insurance. There are one or two competitors. I won't say their names. It's a friendly podcast. This isn't hard hitting journalism, but there's a couple ones out there that kind of focus on the same. We're an emerging nomad or remote work or sort of the hybrid enterprise focused type of insurance. And then, of course, there's the world of existing insurance companies, the big ones. I don't know exactly, Aetna, AXA, whatever, global insurance companies all around the world. Do you see, among, other upstarts, the big insurance companies, and then just ignorance and apathy, who are your biggest competitors? Do you compete with the other nomad insurance brands, or do you compete with pulling business off of huge conglomerates that are 150 years old or 100 years old? Or is it really just blue ocean where we're just trying to get companies that might not even be doing this for their international employees that are working internationally across borders, and kind of pulling them in from the blue ocean of like, this isn't even really a thing? How do you think about competition there?
Yes and yes. The competitive landscape includes both. I would say that more of the competition is coming from the ones that may have nomad or the lifestyle in kind of their name or mission or purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the larger legacy markets, which many of us have come from, spent our entire careers in this industry or this sector, are absolutely in our crosshairs. We believe that the enterprise portfolio of stuff that we can provide, we've got to make some important adjustments to align with some of the specific needs in the U.S. markets. But once we finalize that, which is kind of half two of this year, we will look to begin to siphon off share of market from the large insurance companies that have been around forever. Um, it initially wasn't the thinking. Initially the thinking was focus on this direct to consumer stuff, focus on this digital nomad revolution that's kind of underway. But for the reasons that I previously stated, I think it makes sense for us to then go ahead and begin to try to acquire some of that available market. Um, and I am either ignorant or arrogant in that the value that I think we've created is far superior than what can be provided or achieved from the legacy insurance markets. And we've honestly had conversations with some of the big insurance providers because I think they want to kind of take a look at what's under the hood. And if I step back and say, where does all this go? This is the type of incubator business that I think somebody will watch us doing what we're doing, and eventually in 7 8 years we would then become an acquisition target so they can acquire all of the technology and customer portfolio that we've built.
Something that plays out quite a bit in fintech and in insurtech.
Mhm.
That's definitely a playbook. Um, in terms of this new focus, what does that mean? That you have to adjust your sales and marketing? So before, it might have been, I know obviously, like, it'd be great to have bigger budgets, et cetera, et cetera. But before, if you're going to digital nomads, it might be ads, it might be going to trade shows, nomad events, remote, all of the direct marketing to nomads. Do you now have to roll out a sales force of people that are on commission and quota, and managing their territory? Do you have to rework that part of your business, or is the same kind of marketing functions that you had to market to nomads carry over to the enterprise? Or is there a little bit of digging and reworking to make that work?
It's super cool question. Um, we need to, yes, have a business development organization that we have built and we're continuing to build to have individuals get out there and tell the story. We do have some of the traditional marketing efforts, whether it's participating in nomad events in other countries, participating in a lot of these remote work webinars. When the past couple of years when everything was virtual, we did a good bit of sponsorship and support for those types of events. Um, but when I made the comment earlier about being kind of a best practice employer, as a remote working asynchronously, we're rethinking, the specific collisions in a business development process, leveraging technology. How much can we lean into, journey.com or, a video production or a Loom production that allows us to kind of paint the framework, give it to somebody, they can digest it when convenient for them, link with our calendar so they can get time to talk about their customer opportunity, with some specific details, versus losing 90 minutes to 2 hours in a conference room talking about, products and services that may or may not fit your client. So it's going to be a combination of things that allow us to leverage current tech, because in case you've missed it, people's attention spans seem to have disappeared.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to find the right bit of information to communicate with our audiences, our members, or our consultants, and allow them full flexibility to consume it, when it works for them.
I imagine you've well, I shouldn't say I imagine. I know you've tried different things and experimented with ROI, because just because I see Insured Nomads' brand sponsoring different things. I met the Insured Nomads team in person in Montreal in 2022 at Running Remote, a remote
Mhm.
conference. I'm almost just curious for our listeners. One of the things I try and parse and figure out is, in my experience, I almost have two halves of my head. I know on the one side, there's this slate of remote worker and nomad events, things like Running Remote, which is business focused, but there's also totally like digital nomad festivals that are almost a
Mhm.
party. And that starts to, stray a little bit from anything that has to do with enterprises. And then it's more just a fun party for nomads in Bulgaria or somewhere else. And then on the other hand, I know that there's traditional insurtech or insurance conferences like the HIMSS, HIMSS and
Mhm.
health in Vegas, or there's any number of dozens of Medicare, Medicaid conferences, pharmacy benefit manager conferences, the consultant conference, the channel partner conferences, all kinds of stuff that's very industry specific, has nothing to do with digital nomads wanting to get together for 3 days and sort of party and attend talks. And I think Running Remote is actually kind of something that's in between. It focuses on the enterprise, but digital nomads show up anyway. My whole point though is in mentioning all of this is, are there events that you think are the best, the most well done, the best fit? Like if you look at 2024, it's almost for you, but in your experience, but also if there's enterprise leaders listening or there's remote workers listening, in terms of like, I see these events, I don't know which ones to go to. Has anything stood out as, oh, that event really nailed it in terms of exactly what you want in terms of the audience, the trade show? My experience is limited. I've only really been to Running Remote, but with my background as someone who had, I was a CEO of the health tech company, and now I'm thinking about the world of remote work and digital nomads. I kind of look at the events and I'm trying to figure out, like, is there some conference that I'm just not thinking about that's the best one? And um, so I'm just curious, like, what's been the best, or is there something that you look forward to sponsoring or are looking forward to in 2024 as good ROI, or just an emerging leader in bringing the right people together in this space?
Yeah. Um, I'll probably talk out of both sides of my mouth on this one for good reason. And I'll start with the negative. I for years have really, and I'm not unique in this, kind of line of thinking, but I've really struggled to understand the legitimate ROI in investing in conferences.
And
Is
sorry
there?
to interrupt you, but is this like going back decades, like long before remote work? This is just sort of a principle you've learned over your career, or
And
is it
I wouldn't even
specific
say
to
it's a
this space?
principle, but yes, you're right. This goes back, throughout my 2.5 decades
Yeah.
career, you know, um, and when you get closer and closer to, the purse strings where you're having to make investments in some of these events, has there ever in my career, and I socialize this concern or question with my colleagues and just say, hey, I know you've been in the industry for 40 years, what say you? So I come at it from a thoughtful area, because anything that we do right now, whether it's investing our time or our treasure, must be done with some efficiency and with some thought.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, having said that, if you go to our website, insurednomads.com, we have an events page. We are, speaking at a number of various events. We have been sponsors of the Worldwide Broker Network. I'm in talks with the IBN Network. That's IBN as in Nancy, for their event coming up in Dublin in October. I'll be in Berlin next month speaking at a conference. So I know the Bansko Fest, which is more of the, kind of individuals hanging out and enjoying, company and discussions. So we're looking at many of them to continue to get, our message out. We've been not only sponsors but speakers at Running Remote, especially during the 2 years of kind of isolation. Um, but so I'll go back to my comment about the ROI. Not only do I have that as just a real question that is not preventing us from investing in these going forward, but then um, time invested in these things, especially if you are at a virtual conference where you need to sign up. And theoretically, it's an 8-hour day, and you're going from virtual room to virtual room, and these networking events, and going to somebody's, booth as it was. Um, I just don't know how effective they are. I think if I was to say virtual conference versus in person, I would favor the in person minus the added expense that it comes with. And I've been in business development. I'm an extroverted guy. I need to be around people, and so I tend to favor some of those. But that could just be a personal bias.
Do you like to make use of nomad freedom in the sense of traveling quite a bit, or is your base in the Midwest and you like to stay there? I'm just curious, how much of this do you partake in terms of global travel on throughout the year?
Um, I believe in it wholeheartedly. We've got all three of our kids, their passports. We, I think, just booked some time to live and work in Central America. Um, my business partner Andrew, his wife is Brazilian. They spend a good part of the year down in Brazil. So fortunately, the time zone kind of works. Um, we've got the guy that heads up our IT and dev team. He is in the Canary Islands, but he's currently in Germany. Um, we've got one of our business development guys is en route to Makek. Um, uh, we've got a Brit that is our market director that is in Thailand. I mean, we've got team members in Malaysia. So we strongly encourage people to do that and find a healthy life work balance, and hopefully that includes travel.
the, on that note, this is a little bit of a nerdy question, but kind of in the vein of some of the talks that happen at running remote in places like this. When you have your company that's spread out, everybody believes in the philosophy and leadership supports the philosophy. Are there specific tools and pieces of software? Do you use Teams or Slack or some of the various other, there's always the mention of certain tools can help make async communication work or communication across time zones. Are there any insider tips that aren't giving away too much of the special sauce on when everybody's spread across the world? How do you actually, imagine the somewhat conservative person who thinks like, I just can't imagine work getting done unless we're all standing around the whiteboard, just getting our energy in the room and fixing the problem and being, this is the action. This is how we're going to, charge this initiative forward. Oh, someone's in Bali, someone's in Central America, someone's over here. I can imagine if you'd never seen any of the software, you probably would think, no, there's no way to get work done like that. But I know that there's certain tools that can make all of that a lot easier. And I'm just curious if there's anything you recommend, whether it's a tool or just a teamwork principle that helps you get stuff done when you're in different places.
Um, I would tell you a couple things. One, what not to do. When we initially started, so I'm a kind of a tech nerd, and I don't mind all the computer stuff. Um, and so I would collab with my business partner in what we would affectionately refer to as kind of our omni-channel environment. I mean, we would be, engaging via Teams, DMs via LinkedIn, WhatsApp, SMS, email. We did start with a Slack channel back in the day, and there was just and beyond. There was just too many. And while I could effectively manage it because I know where my notifications are coming in from and I know how to, jump and navigate pretty efficiently, it really is probably something that should not be done more broadly as your team grows. So we've taken that, kind of lesson and really honed in the focus on our platforms. And right now, there's two key systems that we use. One is Slack, and the second is Monday.
Oh,
Monday.
Monday. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I say that's awesome only because I in the 2010s the company that I sold, had an exit in, managed it a lot from New York City, and
Mhm.
I would always see the Monday ad on the subway, and I didn't necessarily hear about anyone using it. There were all kinds of different project management software, but I just remember there was some time in the bull market of the 2010s where Monday was just doing ads everywhere on the subways in New York City. So some fond nostalgia. And sorry to interrupt, but
No, no, no. I mean, I
yeah,
recall those ads, not
yeah,
specifically in New York, but I mean, their
yeah.
ads were ubiquitous, and I remember them. And it's just, it's interesting that I found my way here because part of my professional background, I was, big company, and so of course, the solution was an enterprise Chicago-based CRM type system that we used. And this one, so those are the two primary platforms. Yes, we still engage with email. And if I need to WhatsApp somebody, I can do that. But more broadly as a team, we try to focus on that. And then we've created, I don't know, dozens of channels in, kind of our Slack environment. But if you look at how I work and how my wife works, they're fundamentally different. And I think the way that one is not right. I'm just saying I find that there are so many people that now can effectively do most of their job via their laptop, and in some cases via their smart device, their phone.
Mhm.
And systems like that were designed with those platforms in mind. To me, it's going to be the way work gets done. I mean, the integrations and the automations that are connected between those two. I mean, Slack and Monday, you can go back and forth from either platform. Monday's really well funded, and they've got a lot of automations and integrations that have been effective for us. And now we're using it as our, CRM as well. So,
And you mentioned that you got iPhone and Android apps, so you have an engineering
mhm.
team. It's not just policies and docu-signing policies and signing new insurance partnerships and specialty partner partnerships. You're shipping updates to apps and websites and kind of things, and have that tech company part of your overall operation.
Well, and it's part of what I share with people too is that in a prior life, we espoused to be a technology company, but we could never generate an accurate invoice, and the invoice seemed to have come from a 1982 dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
And so here, since there were no system constraints or limitations on the front end, when there were ideas that were had that we knew would address a specific need, especially if it was tech organized, then we would put it in and just do it.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of tech, I might just ask a cliched question, but a cliched question nowadays, in the sense of, I'm not sure if you get it. You ask this a lot, but I'll just ask it, and it's, does does generative AI and the new Chat GPT or GPT OpenAI technology technologies, LLMs, and the various competitors, does any of this latest technology trend that's exploding in popularity, exploding in hype, and maybe reaching a point where we're starting to evaluate, how real is the hype, what are the actual applications, does any of that trend of the last 6 to 9 months affect your business? Or is it essentially, a nice tool? Maybe the engineers will use it a little bit, but AI does it necessarily disrupt insurance anytime soon?
It We are using it. Um, I have some, moral and ethical question marks in my mind because I'm a man of faith. But right now, the way in which we're using it is more mid office to back end.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, while some of these platforms can replace people, because essentially you can feed it everything, everything about your business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Chat transcripts, policy language, legal documents, benefit designs, you can feed them everything. And you could essentially get somebody that doesn't have to go and check a document or a website or a page to get the answer. The answer is instantaneous, and it could be in any format, telephonic, email, or otherwise. Chats, we use a lot of chats. Um, so yes, I think it can and will continue to impact this industry. Am I worried that it is going to be, a replacement? No. Um, there are other industries that I would be more concerned if I was in them, that I think AI will decimate.
Decimate. So you do think it will come after some other industries quickly, and uh, to the detriment of some industries?
I personally do. I feel like tens of millions of jobs will be lost at the expense of artificial intelligence and large language models. I mean, when I have used it, you can go into our app and we've got a LLM out there that's our travel concierge. I mean, have a conversation with it about any destination you're going to, and it's going to give you the information back in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we've needed to, you know, understand and write code. Um, create draft legal documents, um, you know, support our marketing efforts in copyright for website. I mean, it really, and now that you look at some of the AI, videography, you know, where is the place where all of these things converge inside a marketing department? You
Hmm.
know, how is it going to transform agencies like that? How is it going to transform healthcare? How is it going to transform legal? Um, it's only limited by your creativity in terms of where you want to put it in. And I do think it will have, a pretty seismic impact on industries.
Got it. So, I mean, it sounds like you recognize and are already using it in the sense of we need to interpret this legal document or rephrase this, or, oh, what's this JavaScript function that should go with this CSS in
Hmm.
some front end web code as a functional tool. It can spit out the function you needed. And, you know, the intermediate engineer might have taken 3 hours. This takes 3 minutes. But so on a day-to-day level, there's some usefulness, but you have objections more on the long-term basis. Whether it's going to take away tens of millions of jobs, how it affects society. I think it's probably the same view that a lot of people have, which is I found this useful for this, my recipe, my this or that, but I'm worried about what the macro picture is if it continues on a certain trend. So we'll see. I feel like it changes. I feel like there's a little bit of the hype coming down, and okay, we understand LLMs. They just kind of spit out what has come before in a new package, and maybe the idea that we're on a disaster trend by the end of the year because it's just going to become a smart singularity. Some of that hottest take hype has died off a bit. But I do think that people, compounding is something that's hard for people to understand. And we don't really know what compounding for the next 5 years will do to what, our relationship with AI is. So it's interesting to get your take from the point of view of
Mhm.
someone who's implementing it, but has some, a few concerns about it. I
I mean, we're going to continue
Yeah,
to monitor it carefully and watch what,
yeah,
its application, but it's out and you can't put it back.
yeah.
And I think that, somebody will continue to push it. And I hope it's for the continued betterment of, all industries, our industries, and society at large.
Well, I think on a maybe close to a closing note and on a more positive note, you mentioned you're going to Central America. If you were just talking to the average, an average family in Chicago or Manchester, England, or Toronto, Canada, they've never worked outside of their home country in their lives. They maybe just found out they work for Deloitte, they work for some company,
Mm.
and they just sat around the dinner table and said, "Hey, we can work somewhere else. We could go to Europe. We could go to Asia. We could go to Central America." 2024, maybe even this coming winter in 2023, if there's people out there looking for places to go, what are you excited about, and what sort of just more on the light and fluffy topic of what are the hot destinations? What are you excited about in terms of workation destinations and places that families or single people can go? I feel like a lot of the recommendations out there are just for young single people, 25-year-old
Mhm.
nomads on Nomad lists and all that kind of stuff. So I also try and ask around and figure out, okay, but what if someone is a young family, or even people are older, they have kids that have left the home. Like, what are some of the great destinations around the world for a workation? So need the Wi-Fi, need the co-working space,
Mhm.
but a fun place to go. You got anything on the list?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot. So, from a personal perspective, Belize in Central America is, just it ticks all the boxes, especially for us with a young family and, to live and work and time zone and, ease of access. But places like Lisbon in Portugal, places like Estonia,
Hmm.
super hot, Croatia, and then the number of people that I personally know that have spent a tremendous amount of time in Europe this summer, and broadly this year. Various places, a lot of the hot spots, whether it's, Italy and, um, you know, um, places like that, London. Um, and then I think the jury's out on Thailand. It used to be such a hot spot, but I'm seeing conflicting, stories about, what's going on there. But, from our perspective, we enjoy being in the sun. The kids enjoy being in the water and the sand. And, I've been as far as Bora Bora in the South Pacific and as close as Central America here. And even closer still, great places in Florida. So,
Yeah, I spoke to a representative from Palau in a previous episode, and so there's places now in the South Pacific that I never necessarily pictured myself going to, even in my lifetime. That now it feels like it at some point I got to go down there and see
mhm.
what's going on in Micronesia and the South Pacific. But yeah, Belize is an interesting one. That's a good recommendation. And not necessarily everyone's first recommendation in Central America. People talk about Costa Rica a lot first, and then other countries, but. A country with more of a history with English than you might expect if you imagine everywhere being completely Spanish, is my understanding that it's the official language and has a history as a colony, a British colony. So that's a great recommendation. And
No,
yeah,
Costa is great too. Don't get me wrong. We've
yeah.
done Costa. We just haven't done it with our kids.
Oh
But
yeah.
when we were there, we specifically said this is a place that we're going to bring the family back to. So
What part of Costa Rica is have you been, or your favorite?
we were on the western side, so I forget if it's
Got it.
Liberia or the
Yeah.
other airport.
Yeah,
But
probably the Liberia airport, and then that the Guanacaste or Nicoya side with the
mhm.
Pacific coast. That's great. But yeah, thanks for coming on Remotely Serious. It's been great to reconnect again with you and with Insured Nomads in general. And we'll definitely be tracking what you're up to this year and next year. And we hope everybody we'll put Insured Nomads and your info in the show notes as well for people to take a look if they've listened to this episode.
Please do. And once this is up, then I will send it out on social media. But Curtis, it was awesome to be with you, and I appreciate your time and continued success on Remotely Serious.
Thanks, Brett.